Welcome to another UCL Fantasy video. Today we are going to be talking about the round of 16, my first draft. The draw has already been made, but we don't have official confirmation of specific dates, and I'll talk about this more so later on in this video. I'm going to cover everything you need to know in terms of chips, transfers, and much more, which will also play a part in you forming your own teams. Of course, we have a long way to go until February, but this is my first draft. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below, and be sure to give this video a like. We're trying to get this to over 300, and we're also looking to push on towards 20,000 subscribers. Without further ado, let's get straight into this video. I will go into the fixtures very shortly because I want to talk about the teams we want to target. But first off, there's a few things that I want to cover. And the first thing that you will notice is your budget. So mine was around 102.8 million in Matchday 6 after the games were completed. But now it has gone up by 5 million. So it's now 107.8 million. This will be the case for everybody. It happens every single season. So if you just find out that you have more budget to kind of play with, that's because it's always in the rules. In Matchday 7, the knockout stages, you always get an extra 5 million to form your team. And a few other things I want to talk about is that we get unlimited transfers, and that means you can't use the wild card or the limitless chips, so those have to be saved if you still have them for match days 8 or beyond. And my personal preference, and I talked about this in the best chip strategy video, if you decide to kind of keep these chips for the knockout stages, is to use the wildcard potentially in match day 9, so basically the first leg of the quarterfinals. I would not recommend using a wildcard in the second leg of any single one of these stages, because some of these teams and players you kind of pile up on, they could be knocked out, and then you kind of make your wildcard redundant in a way. The limitless though, I don't think there's any real preference, although I would probably look to use it in either match day 8 or 9, depending on what you're looking to do with the wildcard as well. And I was asked this a lot in the recent deadline stream: do transfers carry over from match day 6 to 7? So maybe if you had 2 free transfers, you only use 1, do you have 3 in the next round? Well, no. The answer is no, because we have unlimited transfers, so transfers do not carry over. This is always the case as well. And the last thing is that last season, and I think it will be the case this time around again, we will have 4 different match days. So we'll have the games on the Tuesday and the Wednesday, and then the next week the same thing, the Tuesday and the Wednesday once again. And that means we can have up to 4 opportunities to make substitutions and also to change the captaincy. I'm not going to talk about the captaincy too much in this video because we don't have specific dates, so I can't say, oh, Captain Messi on a Tuesday, then Captain Sane on a Wednesday, because we just don't know when they're going to play. But what I will do once I form my team and I show you and talk you through each one of my picks, I'll discuss the kind of players I'm looking to target for the captaincy, because they will most likely play on different days, but there is an opportunity potentially for the likes of City and PSG to play on the same day, so you can't captain both Haaland and Mbappe. Obviously, we'll talk more about this in future videos once we get closer to the February games, but right now I'll just briefly talk about, for me, who the best captaincy options are. Let's provide a recap on the fixtures we got from the draw. And Leipzig versus Man City was the first one that came out. And Leipzig are a good team under Marco Rose. They could cause problems. They actually beat Man City in their last matchup 2-0. And I wouldn't be surprised if Leipzig got one result out of the 2 legs. But you'd still heavily favour Man City. And as a result, you can have 3 or 4 of their players. And that's another thing I didn't mention just now. You can now have up to 4 players from a single club. And this will go up by 1 pretty much as we progress through the rounds. And in the final, you can have up to 8 players from one single team. But Man City is definitely one of the teams to target for me against Leipzig, despite the fact that there could be a few problems there. Then Club Brugge versus Benfica, that's actually quite evenly balanced. You'd still favour Benfica slightly, I believe, but you can have options like Mignolet, Micheli from Club Brugge, even Jutla if you want to budget forward. And from Benfica, there's going to be plenty of options, which we've discussed many times in these videos, particularly Grimaldo, Otamendi, Vlaco Dimos, even João Mario, and also Rafa Silva at this point. So there's a lot of decent options actually from these teams, and also across the board. We've got Liverpool versus Madrid, one of the best games on paper. Pretty much a recap and also a replay of last year's Champions League final. Madrid are the favourites, but Liverpool have been really good in this season's Champions League, with the exception of the Napoli away fixture. And then we have AC Milan versus Tottenham. I think that's really difficult from a UCL fantasy perspective. It's going to be an interesting game to watch. I think Tottenham are a slightly better team out of the 2, but once again, Milan have that pedigree, that European history, and that could also play a really big part in this game. So I wouldn't have anyone as a clear favourite in that one. Eintracht Frankfurt versus Napoli, though, once again, this is one team that I would definitely pile up on. Frankfurt have been decent. Of course, they finished second in a really balanced group, but Napoli are one of the informed teams in Europe, and you could easily go for 3 or even 4 of their players when you look at this. So Napoli and Man City for me are two teams you really want to stack up on. Maybe you don't want to go for 3 and that's fair enough, but I would try to have at least 2 from Napoli and Man City. Of course, things can change, so maybe in February I will say something different, but as things stand, Man City and Napoli offer some great value and some fantastic players with those fixtures. Borussia Dortmund versus Chelsea, once again a bit similar to Milan versus Tottenham. You'd probably favour Chelsea, but it's still really evenly matched and Dortmund could cause plenty of problems. Then we've got Inter versus Porto. I think that's really balanced and a really tough one to call. Inter Milan will be favourites, but I actually slightly prefer Porto at the moment, and it will be great to see. In terms of UCL Fantasy assets, once again, you're probably favouring the Porto defenders or Diego Costa in goal, but I think it will be really interesting to see how it pans out, but I wouldn't kind of stack up on any of those two teams, and the same goes for the other kind of evenly matched games like even Liverpool Madrid, Milan Tottenham and Borussia Dortmund Chelsea. And the final game, and what a game it is, PSG versus Bayern. All I'm going to say is that I'm not looking to stack up on defenders from either team. I think it could be high scoring. If anything, I would go for the attackers, Leroy Sané, Sadio Mane, Kylian Mbappe, Lionel Messi, Neymar. But in terms of defenders, I would probably steer clear. Maybe have one of each team or maybe one across both. But this is a game that I think there could be plenty of goals in. And once again, really difficult to call from a UCL Fantasy perspective, but Bayern Munich will be the favourites. So that is all the teams covered. Pretty much what I want to say is that Man City and Napoli are two teams that you could easily go for and you don't have to worry too much. The rest of the games are quite evenly balanced, but you could have 1 or 2 Benfica players and also some other teams sprinkled out in between like Liverpool, Madrid, etc. So that's all the fixtures covered. Let's now show you what my draft is looking like, and you can provide your thoughts down in the comment section below, as well as your own drafts, which I'd be very curious to see. I will cover my Matchday 6 performance in the team selection video as always, but in terms of UCL Fantasy content, there will be plenty of videos and live streams, but more so in the months to come because we have such a huge break, but there will still be FPL content for Game Week 16, and also there could be World Cup Fantasy content, which a lot of you do seem very interested in, which is great to see, so that could also be coming to the channel. So don't worry, there's a break for UCL Fantasy, but you can kind of fill the void with the World Cup and also FPL. So let's get straight into this team, and it will be quite interesting to see some of the picks I've gone for. Before the draw was made, I originally went for Diego Costa, but with Merit having such a favourable fixture against Frankfurt, I have decided to go for him at the moment over Diego Costa, who does face Inter Milan, and I think that game is really tough to call either way. And Courtois is facing Liverpool, where he was man of the match in the final, obviously, last summer, and he was incredible. He was the man of the match, really, by some distance, and the difference maker. But a 5.9 million goalkeeper who's facing Liverpool, that still doesn't really sit right with me, so he could definitely be changed by the time we get to the February matches. But at the moment I am going for him, and I think Madrid will go very far despite this draw against Liverpool, and I think Madrid are my favourites to win it at the moment. So Courtois is in here at the moment, but I do recognise that once we get official confirmation of which teams play on specific days, it could easily be Merit and also Diego Costa instead of going for Courtois and saving that bit extra money to then invest in the outfield position. So Courtois is in here right now, but that might not be the case when the deadline passes. There are certainly many great options this season in UCL Fantasy in terms of the defenders. I've gone for Grimaldo, who is the highest scoring defender at the moment, but most of his returns have come against Maccabi Haifa in match days 1 and 6. But what I like about him is that even in the Portuguese league, he shows a lot of consistency in terms of his output with goals and assists. But I do recognise that the fixture against Club Brugge isn't as easy as it seems on paper, but I would like to have one Benfica defender or goalkeeper. And in this case, I have gone for Grimaldo, but you could easily go for Antonio Silva or Otamendi, who is a ball recovery machine. At the moment, though, I have gone for the Spaniard, and then I've gone for a double-up in Manchester City defence with Ruben Dias and Joao Cancelo. Now, this could backfire in the game against Leipzig at their stadium, because I think that Leipzig could score a goal and maybe even win that game. So definitely a bit risky to double up on any defence, but Man City is once again another example of a team I back to go really far in the competition, and I am very confident they will go through to the quarterfinals. The same goes for Napoli, and that's why I would recommend going for 2 to 4 players, and in my case I will be going for 3 or 4 from both of those clubs. Just a bit of a spoiler alert there. Cancelo, despite his trolling in FPL, I captained him of course for his red card. I think he's one of the best UCL Fantasy defenders, if not the very best, and I think as we progress through all these stages, I think he will continue to prove so long as Man City remain in the competition. And then the final 2 defenders, Micheli, despite facing Benfica, there's a bit of a clash there. I could see a clean sheet for even both teams, maybe a 0-0 draw in one of the games, and it's still a quite tough one to call. And Michele offers great value, even when he doesn't keep a clean sheet. He's got a bit of attacking threat, but more importantly, he's really good in terms of ball recoveries. And Di Lorenzo playing in one of the most informed teams across Europe, and I think Napoli could go through to the quarterfinals or even the semi-finals, and Di Lorenzo has the attacking threat, ball recoveries, man of the match awards in him, you name it. He's a really good option, and there's a reason why he's right up there in terms of points scored. But one notable omission for me was Simican, who was in my team before the draw was made, but because he's facing Man City, that has put me off, but I'm still heavily considering him. He's got a lot of attacking threat, and I think if Leipzig score, he could be heavily involved. The same goes for Nkunku. So Simican is still on my radar despite facing Man City, and there's obviously a lot of other options that you could definitely point towards, even a Real Madrid defender, for example, but I would steer clear from the PSG and also the Bayern Munich defenders for now. Then you've got these Spurs defenders and stuff. I'm not so sure. I think Perisic is another one I would keep my eye on. But I think these 5 defenders are good enough, and I think the closest to getting into this team really in the defensive line is Simican. We have a long way to go before matchday 7, and that's why I currently have an injured player in Leroy Sané, but I think he should be completely fine in February, and that's what really matters. And he's one of my favourite UCL fantasy options, and if he had stayed fit, I think he'd probably be the top scoring midfielder in terms of points, and also right up there amongst all players in every single position. I've gone for De Bruyne right now, but some notable omissions in terms of premium midfielders include Vinicius Jr. and Salah, who is the top scorer in the Champions League alongside Mbappe, so I am considering those two as well in place of De Bruyne, but I think the fixture just about swings it in the Belgium's favour, and that's why I've gone for him at the moment. But I am heavily considering a Real Madrid or Liverpool big hitter in Vinicius Jr. or Mohamed Salah. And João Mario offers great value at 6.1 million. He's on penalties. He's got some good fixtures on paper. I don't think Club Brugge will be easy, but Benfica would still be slight favourites, and I would probably go for João Mario and favour Benfica offensively over Club Brugge. And the last midfielder in the starting 11 is Kvaratskhelia, who has been a breath of fresh air and someone I never really expected to come to the fore, as he has done. And he was a bit unlucky to have his goal, or his assist, should I say, disallowed against Liverpool at Anfield in matchday 6, but he's been so consistent, and you can't really fault the guy. And there's a lot of good Napoli assets, including in the midfield, but Kvaratskhelia would be my absolute favourite one, even over Di Lorenzo and Merit. So he's in here, and another one just like João Mario, who offers exceptional value. And then we've got Jude Bellingham, who is facing Chelsea, but as you saw in recent weeks, Chelsea haven't won at the time of this recording in 4 Premier League matches, and they've lost 2 on the bounce against Brighton and Arsenal. So I think Bellingham and Dortmund could cause some problems and even go through, and I wouldn't sacrifice Bellingham for another midfielder, because I think, pound for pound, he's the absolute best one. He's a jack of all trades, goals, assists, man of the match awards, ball recoveries. I've covered him many times. I think you have to have him, despite the fixture being quite tough on paper. And this is a really good midfield, very balanced, but I do recognise that not having Salah or Vinicius Jr. could be very costly. To complete this team, we have the 3 forwards. Kylian Mbappe and Haaland, I think, are fairly locked in. Despite Kylian Mbappe facing Bayern Munich, he did a really good job the last time PSG faced Bayern, and I wouldn't be surprised, even if PSG do go out, that they'll score plenty of goals and Mbappe will be heavily involved. You could consider Neymar and Lionel Messi, but Mbappe for me is the best one in terms of UCL fantasy, and he's the top scorer. He's very greedy, he's a really good goal scorer, and you can't really fault him because he gets the points and the man of the match awards. Erling Haaland is flagged here, but he's already completely fine. He came off the bench for Man City against Fulham, and he scored a last-minute penalty to win them the game, so he's fine. Let's wait and see if he stays injury-free from now up until February. Of course, we have the World Cup, which he's not going to, but we obviously have some games in January and February in the build-up to the Champions League, and that's where things could happen, of course, and the same goes for any single one of these players. The last forward is Taremi, who I highly recommended in matchday 6. He continued his streak, and of course it'll be interesting to see what he can do for Iran at the World Cup, and he is obviously, once again, another really good value option, 7.7 million, and I think he just fits the bill. And in terms of my personal situation, I would have 0.3 million left in the bank after building this squad, but a lot could change, you know, injuries. We could also have a few other factors playing a part, and also players like Salah might be too difficult to ignore in the end. But right now, this is looking like a really solid draft when you look at the fixtures. In terms of the players, I would be looking to captain, obviously depending on when the fixtures lie. Haaland, Mbappe, Kevin De Bruyne, Leroy Sané would be at the very top of the bill, but I'd also consider a Napoli asset like Kvaratskhelia or Di Lorenzo for sure, and you can't forget Bellingham. I would probably avoid the defenders. I've learnt my lesson in FPL, and whilst it's a bit different in UCL Fantasy to captain the defender, and of course we could have up to 4 opportunities to do so, I still would rather captain a midfielder and forward in most cases. So really, Taremi's also not a bad shout, by the way, but just to kind of summarize, Mbappe, Haaland, De Bruyne, Sane, Kvaratskhelia, and Bellingham, they would be my top picks for the captaincy, but let's wait and see how the fixtures lie, and then we can make a more informed decision, and I can give you an even better answer in regards to that. As always, I would highly recommend looking at the dates when we have them announced and also planning your team accordingly. So do not have any players playing on the first day of Matchday 7 on your bench. That would be a mistake. And be sure to captain a player playing on the first day, and then you can switch to captaincy between days. And the same goes for making substitutions. But remember, it has to be for players that haven't played yet. You can't retrospectively change your captain to someone who's already got 10 points. That would obviously not be fair, and it wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. So if you have any concerns, be sure to check out my How to Play UCL Fantasy guide. And if you enjoyed this video or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's get this video to over 300 likes, and let's also push on towards 17,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and you can also become a patron or a channel member. The links are in the description below. The same goes for the UCL Fantasy League and the Discord server, so all of that is there, and it'll be a pleasure to have you on all of those platforms. I wish you all the best of luck for Matchday 7 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time. Enjoy the break.